Good morning, Vietnam. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of VR Roundtable. Yes, everybody, we're back. We've got new episodes. They're coming weekly. It is going to be incredible. Okay, maybe I'm stretching the truth there a little bit, but basically what we have for you guys today is this is our reunion special where we're getting the gang back together. We're getting the band back together. We're in our garage and we're having a lot of fun. And we have Chris, we've got Steve, we've got Gary. And what we're going to do today is we're going to catch up with everybody, see where everybody has been in their lives in general. Then we're also going to talk about changing habits possibly with VR usage for everybody on the show. And then, of course, we're going to get into the primary topic of the day, which is basically the state of VR. What is going on in the VR gaming world? We're, of course, going to talk about everything Quest with the Quest Pro, all of those sorts of things. We're going to talk about PlayStation VR 2, which is going to be arriving next year in all likelihood. And we're also going to talk about PCVR. Is it dying? Is it dead? Is it in a new phase? What is going on in this world? So we're going to be covering all these things. So I hope you guys stick with us and check out this show, enjoy this show, and we'll see where it goes. But let's go ahead and go around the table here and catch up with all the other hosts of VR Roundtable. And let's go ahead and start off with Chris. Chris, what is going on, man? I know that there's a lot of changes in your life as well. You're basically like an East Coast guy, right? But you're not in the East Coast, I don't think. Tell us a little bit about what's going on.
It's so weird. Yeah, looking at the last podcast, I was still in like my college dorm room. I don't know. Like it's a crazy transformative time in my life. So yeah, I'm out here in San Diego in Southern California. So the weather's always perfect. It's been great. Yeah, so out here on my own with my fiance. So I asked her to marry me like 6 months ago or something.
Congratulations!
Wow.
Thank you. She said yes. I can't believe it. But yeah, we've been together through the whole VR Roundtable thing. So for 4 years, a little more than 4 years, which is crazy. But yeah, living on my own, got a real job, working in self-driving cars, and yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Living the dream. You're living the dream. Working in tech like that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's, if you ever seen the show Silicon Valley, like that's literally how it is. There's extension cords all over the floor. Like we're running servers out of a garage. It's actually crazy.
Nice.
Yeah, I think I know that we had talked personally, Chris, about like this is a long time ago, but maybe it was back when we were at like Oculus Connect 6, when we did that little, and we had talked about like kind of your future stuff. And I remember I told you, I was like, dude, just go after this self-driving car shit. Just go all into this shit. And you did it. And I'm glad that you did it. And I hope everything works out great. San Diego, I lived there briefly. Oh my God, it's a beautiful place. You don't need a sweater or a jacket or anything. It kind of sucks in that way a little bit because there's no real seasons, but man, it is so beautiful. So that must be awesome. All right. Well, let's swing it around over to Gary. And Gary, I know that you have a brand new channel. Well, not brand new, but you've got a relatively new channel on YouTube. So you've gotten back into the YouTube bug. Tell us what's going on with you.
Yeah, so I started a channel called Immersed Robot. If everybody wants to go subscribe to that, of course, that will be appreciated. But it was really like an outlet to just do, really, it's an excuse to play VR. That's really what it comes down to. Sometimes you feel like whenever you're playing VR, you're not necessarily being quite as productive as you want to be and this kind of stuff. And I think if I play some VR and then I upload it to a YouTube channel, then that's a little bit of production there. So yeah, it's just really focused around stuff that I'm interested in, and I'm enjoying doing it. It's just a couple of videos a week, and I'm not sort of really putting in too much effort outside of I've got family life, I've got work and this kind of stuff. So I don't want to get bogged down in focusing on a channel and really pushing it too hard or anything. But 2 videos a week is manageable, and I'm enjoying doing it. And that's a lot of what I've been doing for the past 8 months, 9 months, something like that. That's really sort of my spare time. So I have kept up to date with VR stuff. and I'm still really enjoying it. I still love VR, of course. I think it's fantastic, but we'll get into all of that later. But yeah, I'm having a great time.
All right, that sounds great. Yeah, and everybody be sure to bounce over to pop up an extra browser, bounce over to Immerse Robot, go ahead, subscribe to that and check it out. It's certainly interesting. It's a different kind of a VR show, and I think it's it's just there's no hype or anything. It's just like real talk, and I kind of like it. So definitely check that out, everybody. All right, and let's go ahead and check out Steve. Steve, what have you been doing? So, I mean, man, are you even playing? Well, we don't want to get into the VR too much, but just what's going on in your life personally? Everything good, and how are things going?
Everything's good. I moved into a new home, so my background's changed. We wanted to get our kids into a different school district, and we took advantage of some of the craziness during the pandemic. Really, before the house prices went crazy, but when it was easy to sell my old house, so that's probably the biggest change. Other than that, it's just work, kids. My kids are, compared to when we started VR Roundtable 5 years ago, my kids are a lot older, and they're kind of in that sweet spot. I think when they're big enough that they just jump in the car and go somewhere with me. No special seats, none of that crap, no diapers, and they're small enough that I'm not having to worry about them partying and consuming substances and things like that. So I'm enjoying this in between what I predict is the sweet spot of parenting. So that takes up most of my time. Outside of that, I play a little VR, play some flat games, watch TV, movies, all the typical media consumption stuff.
Yeah, so kind of settle back into like a normal, regular human being type life, right? Are you even like watching football and just like,
Oh
just
yes.
normal everyday things? Yeah.
My Colts come on in 45 minutes. I'm
Oh,
DVRing it. So I'm coming from VR Roundtable straight to the NFL.
cool, cool. All right. So that's kind of and for me really quick, just on I mean, obviously I've been going through some changes in my life. I moved out of a house and I'm in an apartment and lots of other changes. It's been weird for me. And I kind of fell out of the VR thing, but we're gonna talk about our VR consumption here. So actually why don't we go ahead and we'll just jump right into that. Let's talk about like what we've been doing recently from a VR consumption thing. I can go ahead and start off with myself real quick because this is kind of the interesting thing for me is like I have had these life changes that have been going on recently in my life, like some big differences, some big changes, throwing everything kind of upside down, topsy turvy. And that's part of why my VR consumption has kind of fallen off a cliff, basically. But I don't know that I could put it all there. And so what I'll say is most of the people watching this program have probably been video gamers most of their lives, basically ever since they got introduced to video gaming, and they've probably been on and off video gamers for most of their lives. And when you eventually become an adult, sometimes you get sidetracked from your video game life that you would want to have, and you get diverted to these other things, and then maybe you're not playing games as much anymore, and then you get back to gaming, and back and forth. And I think pretty much all of us have probably had a short period of time where it's like, wow, I haven't played any games of any kind for 2 months. That's so weird, and you fall through these phases, but usually you come back and you get back into it. And for me, I kind of fell out of like the VR gaming phase, the regular gaming phase, and I'm not sure what's going on because I don't know if it's just because of so many changes and I'll get back into it, everything will be fine, or if I'm like losing interest in VR in general, which sounds crazy because I'm still a long-term believer in VR. I still think this is going to be one of the most incredible entertainment platforms that we're going to see in all of our lives. This is going to change the way everybody lives going into the future. But we'll get more into that in State of VR. But let's go back over to Chris. So Chris, obviously you have a lot of changes that you've had as well. Have you noticed that you've fallen out of playing VR and gaming as much as you used to, or do you still try to get into it? Or how do you balance all that? I mean, you got your fiance there and, you're getting ready to get married and all of that. So I know it's all complicated.
Yeah, there's so many other things. Like I haven't really touch VR too much. The only time I have a Quest 2 and a Quest 1. That's all I have. All my desktop VR stuff is just like back at my parents' place, which is pretty weird. So every once in a while I'll hop on the Quest 2 and like play Beat Saber or something. But I don't know, maybe we'll talk about this later too. But there hasn't been any game that's really got me excited for that platform too much yet. But every once in a while I have like a friend come over, and one of my favorite things to do is play Roundabout VR mini golf. It's like my favorite thing. So I love that. I do play that quite often if I have people over. It's a really fun like party game to play. Since I have both the Quest 1 and Quest 2. But yeah, it's weird. Like there's very different games that I used to play. I used to play a lot more story-driven stuff. Now it's just like these little mini games that are fun.
Do you think like the amount of time that you spend playing, whether it's flat or VR, has that decreased, or is it pretty much the same as it always been, or has that decreased a little bit for you?
It's decreased a lot.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Like I have I don't know, moving to Southern California, I always liked immersive entertainment and stuff. So I'm actually like basically a theme park junkie now. So I go to Disneyland all the time and SeaWorld and Knott's. I have a YouTube channel called Park Swap. If anyone wants to check it out, I do videos every week of going to different theme parks. But for me, I guess that's my new immersive entertainment. I kind of enjoy doing that if I can versus going into VR. Even though VR is still great, sometimes
Hey, real
things
quick,
are better.
since you mentioned that, are you disappointed with what's gone on with like the void and stuff like that? The disappearance of that. Do you hope that, like, what do you think long term? Like, if you're really into like the theme parks, I got to imagine like part of you is thinking like, oh my God, wait till VR and AR gets so intertwined into all of this. Like, what is Disney going to do with all that? That'd be so exciting, right?
I know. Yeah. Everything's like pretty sad if you actually look at what's happening to all the theme parks and Disney in general. So even though I'm very excited if that future happens where they use all these technologies, I'm just like, man, I feel like we just have what we have, and everything new they're adding is getting worse. But we'll see. No, I really am sad about the Void because I did the Void back in Orlando, and it was one of the coolest things I've probably ever done. And I mean, yeah, it's really disappointing that arcade-based VR hasn't taken off. What's even like worse to me is I can't even play like an arena scale or like hall scale game on my Quest 2 yet. Like that's kind of insane. I was expecting like, I have 2 Quests. Why can't I be in the same room right now?
Wait, do you have Space Pirate Trainer? Because they just added they added this new mode,
They
the Space
finally
Pirate
released
Arena.
that?
Yeah.
No way. Okay, well, that's exciting. I'm excited about that.
It's supposed to be incredible. I haven't tried it yet either, which I know, shame on me. But okay, let's bounce over to Gary. Gary, what about you in terms of like, well, I mean, you're doing immersed robot, right? So you're still involved in VR, but since like doing the show and stuff, have your habits in VR changed much, Gary?
Yeah, they have changed. I'm still sort of one of these people that will stay up to date on all the news. I check the websites, all the news websites daily, really, and just keep on top of all that stuff because I'm just interested in that anyway. But in terms of how it's changed, it's really just focusing on the kinds of games and content that I want to play rather than feeling like I should have to play certain titles that are being released to do the show. So I'm focusing more on stuff that I like, which is really like No Man's Sky is still holding my interest even now. It's been out for such a long time. The VR mode has been out for a long time, but I still really enjoy that game for what it is. It's not necessarily for everyone and perhaps a little bit more cartoony, but that game's great. So No Man's Sky, Elite Dangerous, these kinds of stuff. So I'm just focusing on that kind of thing really. And I tend to sort of stay away from the more smaller arcadey kind of stuff really. It just doesn't hold my interest. However, I will say that I've recently picked up Pistol Whip, which just completely passed me by because I knew it was sort of a rhythm game kind of stuff, which doesn't really interest me, but I'm really enjoying Pistol Whip, I've got to say. Sometimes I've got, even when I sort of go into Beat Saber and stuff, which is a game which I've never really thought was fantastic in terms of, for me, I think it's a good game, but it's not really what draws me into VR. I can certainly enjoy it, and I got into Beat Saber quite a lot actually at certain times, and I'm feeling that same way about Pistol Whip. For me, VR is just a different thing. Whenever I want to set some time aside to play VR, it's more in these bigger open world kind of things, really. I guess that's what it comes down to. So my habits have changed by just indulging in that more since the show.
Yeah, I'm jealous of what you're talking about there because it is kind of fun when when you're doing a regular show, you do have this um situation where you're kind of stressed out a little bit. You have to cover all the newest things and you're bouncing from new thing to new thing to new thing.
Mm.
And it's nice to be able to just be like, you know what, I just want to do a deep dive into Fallout 4 VR
Yeah.
and just work on that for months, add mods, try different things, change all the different settings, try to get it running better, and just kind of go deep dive into that. That's kind of nice. You can kind of, it's almost like you're in a cabin in the woods and you can just forget about all the bullshit and just like do a deep dive into something. Is really cool.
Just before we move on, I hope I didn't just say then that Beat Saber isn't a fantastic game, because I am going to get a lot of hate for that, by the way.
Bet you
All right,
are.
and we'll go ahead and check out Steve. So, Steve, obviously, you kind of said that you've fallen back into more of a regular, normal, everyday Joe type of scenario. But tell us a little bit about your current gaming habits, flat and VR. Like, how much do you play a week, and do you ever see yourself going back to being a more heavy user?
I don't know. Well, no, we'll get into that. So right now, no, heavy user because there's nothing to play heavily. So I think I play. I go back and forth. So when I play a game, I tend to stay with that game until I'm done with it. And for a game like Elite Dangerous or something, that's not really possible. But when I was playing Fallout, I did what you described, Anthony, a few years back. We had taken a break around the holidays, I think maybe 3 years ago, and that's what I did. I hunkered down and I played nothing but Fallout 4 VR for like 5 weeks. I modded it and I loved it. Fantastic experience. And so the most recent VR game that I've just kind of plowed through and became my focus, into start to end, was Subnautica Below Zero. So now I'm not playing that. I completed it. The VR mod works great, by the way. Feels just as native as the original Subnautica, but performs better. But when I completed that, then I started playing something flat, right? And I've kind of got immersed, for lack of a better word, there in in a flat game in Sekiro, and and then casually though, when I do feel like doing VR, and if I'm not playing through something like like a start to end game, I will jump in Elite Dangerous, or more recently my flying time has been in Microsoft Flight Simulator. It's pretty great to put the headset on, just choose, for example, my local airport, and just fly around my city a litlittle bit, or I do some of the what they call them discovery flights, where you can choose interesting points throughout the world and just fly around. It's ironic that it's probably the most demanding VR experience available today, but I'm using it in a totally casual sense, where I'm just sitting down and just flying around with no purpose and just taking in the scenery. So those are my habits. Before we were packing up to move, we didn't really plan to move. It just kind of, the opportunity struck. So I didn't have much heads up, but I was in the middle of playing Skyrim, and that's something I really want to get back to. I had maybe 50 hours into it, had it modded. I've had a SSD failure since then, so I can't just jump back in where I was. I'd have to recreate the whole modded structure and all that again. But that's probably my next big VR thing, is to go back to Skyrim. I may start from scratch again, which sounds horrible, but it also sounds nice. I had some great mods in that, and some really amazing feelings of ambiance. In particular, I remember this one time I'm in a snow setting and it was nighttime, and the sky above me had all these sort of aurora borealis effects. It was all rainbowy in color, and a dragon flies by. Like it was a good time. And those are the things that I want to have. And I know we'll get into where I see that direction going a little later when we do State of VR. But Those are my habits. I'll find the big set pieces. I'll go enjoy those. But otherwise, I'm out of the VR bubble. I'm out of trying every indie experience that is created and doing that dance.
Yeah, real quick though, when you're hardcore into VR and it's such a big deal for you, one of the things that you start thinking about is, do I need to upgrade my CPU? Do I need to get an even better graphics card? So, and that stuff all gets very expensive, of course, after a while. Have you fallen out of that, or are you going to still keep up with that? Or are you going like if there's a new crazy Nvidia card, are you going to be jumping on it, or do you think you're going to be like more like I'll be sitting on the sidelines a little bit?
I'll jump on it, right? I always set aside money out of each payroll period into my Play Kitty fund, and with the market, I mean GPUs at this point are like Bitcoin or any commodity, they surge in pricing. So I unloaded my 2080 Ti and I now have a 3080 Ti. I have a Pimax 8KX, and so that's I still chase the peak fidelity that I can get. That's still something important to me. So yeah, I'm in the game for as long as there is something like Elite and Flight Simulator and Skyrims and Subnauticas out there. As long as I have a desire to play those games, I'll pursue that avenue.
Yeah, and we know that Gary loves to buy things, of course. Gary always stays up with this stuff. He'll say, "Oh no, I'm not going to do anything," and then like 2 weeks later, he bought a brand new video card or something.
Yeah.
So
it's not failing.
yeah, but it's okay. And that's Gary. That's probably why you started Immerse Robot, right? So you can say to your wife, "Hey, but I have this new channel. I had to do it. I had to buy that new card, right?"
Exactly, yeah. And in fact, the fact that I got a 3080 back in December last year, or November, December last year, whenever I got it, it was almost like the impetus to start the channel, because I thought I can show people how games run on a 3080 compared to other graphics cards. And I thought that's got to be worth doing, hasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. You got to find a way to work that stuff in. Okay, so now what we're going to do is what we have here on I have some notes here of things that we wanted to cover. And one of the things that we have is to discuss any VR high notes since basically our last episode. So what I'm thinking this is about is like, we've been out of it for a while, right? So what is like the biggest VR thing that maybe has happened that we're excited about? Does anybody want to jump in with something specific related to this before we get into state of VR?
The obvious big one is Quest 2. I do think the four of us got on a show with Sebastian of MRTV on Quest 2 launch day. So I'm not counting that, or Quest 2 announcement day. So since VR Roundtable's last episode, Quest 2 was released, and I'm gonna hankering to say that's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, I'd agree with that in terms of like impact of overall. Since we did the last show, that's definitely got to rank pretty highly, just on the VR landscape. I mean, when you look at how successful the Quest 1 was, and the Quest 2, by all accounts, is dwarfed the success of the Quest 1. So yeah, I think it's had a huge impact and is changing how the industry is working at the moment as well.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I mean, yeah, all I could really say is the Quest 2 as well, in terms of like a big thing that has happened. But yeah, why don't we just go ahead and let's just get into the state of VR, because I mean, that's really the biggest question here is like, where is VR right now? Where is it going? And we've got so many different things to think about here. And one thing, why don't I start it off with this? I'm going to be the guy that says, you guys can argue with me if I'm wrong about this, you disagree. I believe that, so here's the thing. Let's go back in time a little bit, like back to 2016. If we all go back to 2016 and think of like when VR was first happening and we first got our Vives, and, PlayStation VR is coming out in October, and the Oculus Rift just came out, but it doesn't have any freaking motion controllers yet. And, let's go to the early days of VR. All of us kind of were into VR. We all saw the promise and the dream. And I'll just say for myself personally, as somebody that has been like, I've jumped on so many video game platforms throughout the years, and I've always been this like ridiculous early adopter guy that like I had a freaking Panasonic 3DO like in the first year that that thing was available, and it was like $800, and there was no one on planet, like maybe 1,000 people in the entire United States had one of those damn things. So I was like a crazy early adopter guy. I'd always jump on these bandwagons, but the thing is, I would jump on a bandwagon and I would be expecting a number of years later, everybody else is on the bandwagon too. So it's like, yeah, I jumped on the bandwagon early, but everybody else caught up. And so in 2016 with VR, I kind of thought, hey, this is going to be the same thing. You know, this is the Mario 64 moment, right? One of the best things you could say about VR is like, when's the last time you've truly been blown away by some kind of video game? And for a lot of people, they randomly were in a Toys R Us one day, and there was a Nintendo 64 kiosk with Mario 64, and for the very first time they saw the cartoon Mario running around, and it looked like a cartoon that was alive, and he was jumping on trees, and it blew your mind, and you were a little kid back then. And that was like the last wow moment, and VR was another one of these wow moments. And I literally thought back in 2016 that, yeah, I'm going to be way early to VR, but 5 years later, my buddies that are playing Xbox, they're going to be playing VR too. And in about 5 years, everything's going to be great, right? And here we are, fast forward, you know, how many years it's been. And now my buddies still have Xboxes, man. They never got VR. And so we never really, like, I don't know if you guys feel the same way. Like if you guys were expecting like almost everybody to come over, like, which is unreal. It's terribly unrealistic to even believe that. But
no, I agree with you 100%. And I'm going to say that it's a shame that our first key point, you and I can't argue about this because we agree. It's like, I totally like, yeah, I'm an early adopter, you know, not on everything, but when I'm interested in something, I early adopted. When we were playing those games in 2016, you know, the first time you play Space Pirate Trainer, you're like, oh, it's like a Galaga. Or you play Brookhaven, you're like, oh, this is what a Silent Hill is going to be like in VR. Like we were drawing, at least I know it myself was, I would play all these games and I was drawing parallels. It was I guess wise enough to realize that it was early days, but naive enough to think that it was just a matter of time before, you know, these experiences were going to morph into the mainstream gaming that I thought everyone would eventually be on board. And you know, we have it here in the show notes. You know, it's the big VR divide. You know, standalone versus tethered, and that's where we are here. And that's my biggest critique with the I just call it for now the Oculus strategy is they are taking 2016 VR, and I don't want to say they haven't improved it because the resolution's a little higher, but they're essentially taking 2016, 2017 VR and condensing it down portable. It's still super hot is still largely the same. You know, the job simulator is still largely the same. It's the same types of experiences, just portable. And I get the reason why that's important and the accessibility, you know, from a cost perspective of the hardware and not having to have the PC. I get their interest, and I also get Oculus's interest or Facebook's interest from a, you know, where they really want VR to go, which may not have much to do with gaming in and of itself. So I agree with you. I think, long story short, you know, we were wrong. We thought all of our buddies would be in VR right now. I thought I'd be playing the latest and greatest mainstream game in VR, and we're not. It's sadly still a lot like 2016. I can just do it in my backyard now instead of my office.
Yeah. Why don't we? Chris. Yeah. What do you think, Chris, about like? Were you similar to me and Steve with this idea that you thought, oh yeah, I'm way early to the party here, but 4 or 5 years later, everybody else will be at this party too? Did you kind of think that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember, you know, I got the Dev Kit 1 and I was blown away when I tried Minecraft. That was my first ever VR experience, and like that blew my mind. I just remember like the rate of change back then was so fast, you know, then like a year later the Dev Kit 2 came out and it was like, wow, there's like positional tracking. This is crazy. And then, you know, like the Vive came out and it's like, wow, my hands are in here now. Like everything was so exciting and cool back then. And I was like, it's only gonna be like a year before we have face tracking and hand tracking. And I mean, we're finally starting to get some of this stuff, but hand tracking's still like janky on Quest 2, and it kind of works. And we don't really have face tracking yet. Like, what happened to all the hype? There's gonna be all this crazy stuff, and I feel like just none of it really ended up happening as quick as any of us thought. Yeah, I really did think all my friends would have VR, and maybe a few do sometimes, but like they have a headset that's sitting and collecting dust. I don't know any friends who are actively playing VR. Like, even the friends I convinced over the years to get VR, they got it at some point, played it a little bit, and don't do it anymore. So it is a little sad. Like, we're playing the same stuff I was playing back then.
Yeah. Before we get to Gary, just because this thought popped in, because I'm going to forget about this if I don't mention it now, is I was taking a walk last night. I like going for these like night walks to clear my head and stuff. And it's just like, if anybody, if you feel like you need a psychologist or something, I'm telling you, great for your mental health is to go on a nice long walk. You can clear your head. It's great. So anyway, last night I'm taking a walk, and I'm in like this downtown, midtown area of Sacramento, and there's a lot of stuff, going on. People are always going places. It kind of has a little hype and little vibe to it. And I'm walking along, and I happen to look up, there's like an apartment building, and I'm looking up at this window, and I see this guy. I'm like, what is this guy doing? I'm like, oh, that dude's playing a Quest, and this guy's by his, he puts the headset on. Basically, he was starting his VR session for the night, kind of, and he like grabbed his headset, put it on, and I'm like, wow, that's interesting. So, VR is a thing. People are playing VR out there, but it was a Quest. But anyways, it was kind of encouraging for me to see that. But let's go ahead, and Gary, what about you? Going back to 2016, did you believe that maybe you were the first to the party on this deal, but 5-6 years later, you're going to have like cousins and nephews that are all playing VR on a regular basis?
Yeah, I definitely did think that would be the case. And just going back to 2016, I feel like that when I had people over and I was showing them, because to me it did blow my socks off when I first tried VR. It was transformative in terms of how you can consume and play games and stuff like this. And you did think that the content we had then wasn't really, blowing me away necessarily, but you look to the future and what it means, and what you guys were saying. Once we get these higher, AAA kind of experiences, long form experiences, that is when it will switch. I always felt. But it was very quick to see that when I demonstrated it to friends and family, that they were nowhere near as impressed with it as I expected them to be. I've shown it, and they said, yeah, it's cool, and that's it. And then they're on to the next conversation and almost forgot about it. However, one thing I want to say is the Quest 2, and we'll get into this discussion of standalone versus tethered and this kind of stuff that Steve alluded to. I will say that I've got a few friends now that have picked up the Quest 2, and it's that device, the fact that you can say, because they weren't aware, everything is included in the box. They didn't know this until I mentioned it. I assumed people just knew this. And I said, you don't need a PC. You don't need to, have a wire or anything like that. Just pick up the Quest 2. And they have picked it up. And I think in terms of getting people into, I'm sort of cutting corners here, but I think that by saying 5 years ago, we would say we expected everybody to be in here. I think that now I'm starting to see with the Quest 2 that some of my friends who I didn't expect to ever get into VR are actually picking this thing up now, and we're enjoying it together. But that's a different kind of feeling I had back 5 years ago. I expected them to get into it because the experiences were so compelling. The reason they're getting into it is actually the convenience. And that's the difference as to where I expected us to be now and where we actually are. It's purely convenience, even though a lot of the experiences are not as compelling as they want them to be. They've picked up 2 games. My friends have bought Quest 2s. They've picked up 2 games and they just play those games. And it's great that they're doing that, but they're not getting the the level of the compelling nature that we know VR can have. It's frustrating almost when you see that what you can get with VR with a high-end setup, and they've got no interest in diving in that far. But yeah, I think there's a lot to say about this, and we'll get onto that, I'm sure.
Yeah, and just to wrap this up really quick is like I think the fact that we all had these kind of expectations that it was gonna like this was gonna have some more momentum than it really has had, and it was going to expand where more of our buddies and people that we know would be more involved with it, and that didn't really happen. So because that didn't really happen, I think there is a bit of a realization for all of us that this whole thing is going to take longer than we thought. You know, we all had a timeline of how quickly we're going to get Red Dead Redemption in VR or Grand Theft Auto in VR. We all had this idea like, yeah, BioShock is going to be in VR and it's not going to be that far away. And then that's when everybody's going to come because it's just going to blow everybody away. And I think this realization that there's this like general realization that, man, we might have jumped the gun by 5 years. Like we might literally be like that might be 5 years away. Like we might have expected this 5 years earlier than it really was going to happen. So I think that kind of it's almost like, yeah, we're kind of back to a reality. It's like VR was on this ascent and then it's kind of just plateaued and we've kind of evened out. We're stable, we're alive, we're going to continue, which is great. But it seems like, that hockey stick thing isn't quite happening right now. But let's move the topic now and let's go to the Quest. And of course, Steve has titled this The Big VR Divide. And this is, I'm assuming Steve did this. Maybe it was you, Gary. But
it was me.
Okay. So, yeah. So the big VR divide is standalone versus tethered is what Steve is kind of alluding to here. And why don't I start off with an argument? Okay, so Steve, you wanted an argument. Let's do the argument. My argument is, so Steve, you were just kind of like lamenting the fact that, we've got this Quest 2 thing. It's become it's Facebook's focus. And so high-end VR is not really a concern anymore. And you feel like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're feeling like this like Quest 2 thing isn't going to get things going. My argument, though, is we do need this like wide open sea of people that are using these products because my argument has always been, here's my complaint for somebody like Gerillo, okay? If you're like a hardcore PCVR nut job, right? You've got the highest end graphics cards, you're tweaking your settings and your timing and your reprojection and all of that. You're doing all these things. You're making sure that your monitor isn't resizing something. So whatever, you're deep into the weeds on that, right? And those people will say, Quest 2 is garbage. It's ruining everything, man. It's you guys are getting happy with these crappy graphics that look like a Nintendo Switch. I feel like I'm playing a PSP game, blah, 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 blah. And my argument to all of them is like, Gerillo, wait a minute. Don't you ever want to play a legit Grand Theft Auto VR? Don't you ever want to play a true Red Dead Redemption, not something that was just scraped together to make a few extra bucks, but where they like Fallout 4 was not true VR. Will we ever get a real Fallout in VR? My argument is the only way we get there is with like 20 million people using the thing on a relatively regular basis. And the only way we get to 20 million people using the thing on a regular basis is doing what they've done, exactly what they've done. We have complaints about Oculus for all these little decisions that they've made, but in the grand scheme of things, they have a $299 headset that comes in a singular box. You can go to Target, you can go to Walmart, you can go to Best Buy. A family can buy a singular box, bring it home, and they can all enjoy VR if they share the same account. I don't know exactly how that works, but so Steve, what's your argument to that?
Well, I think you're not wrong, and I don't have all the answers. If I did, I would probably be rolling in the dough, and I would have this thing solved for all of us here. So, take anything I say with a grain of salt. But my perspective is that I fear that the $299 standalone Facebook product is a Trojan horse for something else, right? They have no interest in becoming the next PlayStation or the next Xbox. They have an interest in locking down VR for different purposes, whether it be data harvesting or social media or whatever. But let's set that aside. Let's say all of your cousins and your aunts and your uncles, you know, they see this $299 package and they run out and buy it because you've explained to them that everything they need is in the box, and they're playing Beat Saber and they love it, and they're playing Pistol Whip and they love it. But eventually they stop loving it because it's the same thing over and over. And where does it evolve from that point? So yes, short term gain, no question about it. We're seeing people, but do we want Oculus Quest to be 5 years from now? Do we want that to be like the old Guitar Hero plastic guitar sitting at the pawn shop? Because it never took it past that point, right? Guitar Hero was huge. Wii Sports, you know, and the original Wii was huge, but both of those products are gone, right? Yeah, Nintendo's still there, but they're gone in a completely different direction. So do we want that? So I think that risk is on the table, that people go, yeah, I got VR 3 years ago and now we don't play it anymore. Whereas the counter to that is if you make compelling software and compelling software is there, you have your gaming market that will continue to drive it and continue to push it forward. So, and I'm not saying that Oculus isn't trying to make software, right? I know they're trying to, but they're constrained in a lot of ways. They're constrained by what they can do on the mobile chipset. They're constrained by the economics around the size of the VR market. But that's where we are. So simply releasing hardware and having a hardware surge that makes sense. And let's not forget, yeah, the Quest 2 is a incredible value. I will not bemoan the hardware in and of itself anyway. If anybody came to me, unless they were just flush with cash out there, you know what, I would recommend they get a Quest 2. My bigger issue is the direction of Oculus / Facebook, where let's just cut off all PC development. Let's steer people to break away from the PC, and that just all goes back into their interest. That's what they want. They want that tether broken. Yeah, their hardware will still let you connect to a PC, and will still let you play Half-Life Alyx or whatever if you connect your Quest 2 to Steam, but that's clearly not where they want to go with it. So I fear that yes, short-term gains are where we are, and Quest 2 is doing great at that. But will that story still be true 3 years from now, 5 years from now, or will we look back and said, man, short-term gain didn't pay off for us, because now people think they've had VR and they've since abandoned it because they got over Beat Saber phenomena.
Yeah. Okay. Chris, I want to jump off of Steve's point where he said, you know, that people run, you know, they're going out there, they're buying a Quest, they might get Beat Saber, they might get Pistol Whip, you know, they might get The Walking Dead or something like that, but they're not buying other games. And after a while, that Quest is going to be in the closet collecting a little bit of dust, and maybe it gets pulled out every now and then if there's like a party and they want to show people, you know, pass it around or something like that, but maybe it's not used as much anymore. My question for you, Chris, is Oculus, like, they obviously have decided that the Quest 2 is their deal. And one argument that I've always made is like, look, Oculus, if you've decided that the Quest is your thing, then isn't it time to take $50 million and a really incredibly talented developer and say, look, I want you to bang for 2 years. Hopefully this has already happened and we just haven't seen the announcement yet. And hopefully this announcement is coming very soon when they have their big show coming up. But what do you think, Chris? Like, don't they need to like make a $50 million Quest game so that there's some incredible breakthrough game that people have that inspires them? Half-Life Alyx was like that game for the PCVR thing. We need that for the Quest 2. Do you think Oculus is doing something in this area?
I mean, they have to be, and it's so sad that it hasn't happened already because, my Quest 1 and Quest 2 have been collecting dust for, a better part of a year. Like you said, I pull it out every once in a while and play the same old game, but I think we can all agree there's nothing exciting going on in the gaming space, in the VR gaming space that we're like, wow, we have to all play that right now, and like we're all gonna get our headsets on and play it together. I haven't seen a game like that in a really long time, and Oculus is gonna run into some trouble here pretty soon, I think, if they're not thinking about this, because they're getting the hardware sales now and everyone's playing Beat Saber, but yeah, it's going to wear off in a year or something, and then everyone just has this hardware that they're not using. And I agree with Steve. It's going to be an issue if everyone has this hardware, they think they've done VR, and then they never get back into it. It's a real concern, and like I'm even just seeing it in my own personal self, and I love VR, so I can only imagine what some regular average Joe is feeling with their hardware decision. Like it's so cheap that they could get into it really easy, but now that they have it, like, what do they do?
They can leave it just as
yeah.
they can leave it just as quickly as they entered. Right there's an
That's
element
true.
of a commitment or skin in the game. But I agree that I think having the low point of entry in and of itself is a good thing. So I'm not going to hog any more time. But Gary, as we go to you and anybody else, I'm curious if any of you all have anecdotes similar to mine, where I know people that have gotten a Quest or a Quest 2, and they like it, but then they stop. And I don't want my experiences that I observe in my world, in my bubble here in the Midwest, US. I don't want to assume that that is what's going on everywhere. And the four of us, we're spread out across the country. And in Gary's case, he's all the way over there across the pond. So I'm just curious, as you give your answers and we go on, if you all are seeing something similar, or are you seeing people that are Quest 2 only? I'm not talking about people connecting to PCs, but are Quest 2 only, and they're staying engaged with it, and they're buying lots of software, and they're trying new things. And I don't see it and witness it myself. And in our VR bubble, in the VR 365 Discord and such, no one's doing that, right? So I'm curious, where are these people, and if any of y'all have observed that?
Yeah, so for me, I've not yet. My couple of friends have recently picked up a Quest 2, and I've yet to see the long-term results of that, really, in terms of how long they're going to stay with it or not. One of the interesting points, Steve, that I'd like to ask you quickly, actually, is, do you see this as a problem in terms of pure hardware? Like with the Quest 2, the hardware capabilities of the Quest 2 is being the main fundamental issue, or as Chris is alluded to, like the software that's on the Quest 2? Because to me, there's a separation here where we are discussing the difference between tethered and standalone. Standalone's limitations are hardware. Tethered, you have the higher fidelity and all of these other things, but with that comes deeper experiences, simulation kind of based experiences, and just longer form experiences. If we could somehow get an approximation of that onto standalone, of course not necessarily like quite as graphically intensive, but if we could get the content that we are seeing on PC over to Quest 2 in a lower graphical fidelity, is that enough, do you think?
Is it to me?
Yeah, sorry, Steve. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I don't know. Ultimately, I think people want allegiances, and people feel. I've had this conversation and before, and it's interesting that when a new console releases, PS5 and the new Xbox that released here, I guess now a year ago almost, but people were lining up and will shell out their $500. They'll have zero qualms about it. They're all sold out, and I get, there's a silicone shortage out there, and they can't make enough. But largely, those brands have built up a loyalty, and when you go out and if you buy a PS5 right now, you don't have a lot of PS5 exclusives, right? There's a couple. Insomniac has actually ironically released a lot, but you don't have this massive PS5 library. You're playing PS4 games at better performance, but people know that the consumers know that they're making an investment. They know, they have utmost confidence that they know Sony is going to release future Naughty Dog games, future, insert favorite developer here games, right? That people feel safe with that. With VR, they don't feel safe yet. And I think that's what has to be solved. And whether it's the fidelity this or graphics that, I'm not so much trying to get there. I mean, Nintendo does a lot with minimal hardware. So I think it's more of a loyalty and more of a trust to make the investment. That's what I think would need to move the market, where people, go out, and if you were a big PlayStation 3 gamer and then you bought a PS4, it just makes sense. You're going to buy a PS5. You're not even going to think about it. Yeah, I'm buying a PS5 when it comes out because I've had the 4 PlayStations before it. So I think we, and if it's going to be Oculus or Facebook, they have to figure that out. And then it just goes back and begs the question, then is that even their interest? Is that even where they want to take it? I don't think they do. I don't think they're trying to be like PlayStation or they're trying to be like Xbox. I think they're trying to use it as a Trojan horse for their big money where they do their business, which is in data and social media.
Well, I think they want the App Store. They want Apple's App Store. That's what everybody wants. Everybody wants to own the entire. No, they want to be Xbox, but they also want to be Zoom, and they want to be all these companies, and they want to provide all of it. I mean, yeah, they're gonna mine all that data as well. That's just going to be extra cheese on top. But I think what they're looking at long term is that they're saying this is the next computing platform. We're buying beachfront property right now, and they're trying to set up that ecosystem. But I mean, we'll have to see how it all works out long term. But why don't we see? The thing is, we've got a lot of topics we got to get into, and I know like all these different things are juicy, and we can go into all kinds of tangents. But we're going to have to move this along, or it's going to be a 4-hour podcast. So let's go to our next major topic in terms of the state of VR, which is, let's talk about PCVR, because this is why we got into this thing in the first place back in 2016. Yeah, we do need these lower end devices like Quest 2 that can bring in the masses because of the affordability. But what really got us jazzed in the very beginning was high level VR experiences that we got from PCVR. And unfortunately, this kind of dovetails with the fact that it doesn't seem like the masses, like we've plateaued. And so PCVR development has suffered, and it's become like, I actually do a little bit of consulting work with a developer that has worked on PCVR games and Quest games. And this developer and many other developers have explained to me that if your game is not on the official Oculus Quest store, not App Lab, but on the official Oculus Quest store, your chances of your company breaking even on that particular project, that idea that you spent a year and a half working on a certain game, you're paying all these different developers, your chances of breaking even are almost negligible. And so we have people shifting from PCVR development more to Quest development, and we also have other developers that have just left VR and they're going back to flat games. We have some of that going on too as well. I was looking up some old VR developers and looking at like, what have these guys have been doing, and some of them have like literally gone back to flat gaming and just basically given up on VR altogether. So PCVR development is in a weird place. Gary, I know that we've got Lone Echo 2 supposedly still coming, even though, I mean, I'm sure we'll get the announcement at this next Oculus thing in terms of like a finalized date or whatever. But is the death of PCVR greatly exaggerated, or is it on the money? I mean, what's going on here?
I don't think it's dead. I don't think that PCVR is dying. You get a lot of people commenting on this. I think something hit like a month ago or something where everybody was talking about this yet again, about PCVR being dead. And while I don't think it's dead or dying, I think it's in a lull at the minute. And the fact is that by Lone Echo 2 representing the last major investment in PCVR by Facebook, I think that marks a significant gap that is going to exist. From 2016 to 2019, we had significant investment in titles by Facebook in funding studios to create these bigger titles for PCVR. That is gone, and it's probably never going to come back. So I think that creates a void, and it's going to create a lull in PCVR. So while I don't think it's dead or dying, I think we are in a lull, and I think it's difficult to argue that. And there will be people that will say PCVR is not dead. It's great. We've got all of these titles coming out. Many of them, smaller indie titles, not to disparage them or anything. I'm sure that there are good titles in there, but we're not getting the big hitters. And that's the significant point that is going to bring people into PCVR. So I think that we're in a lull. I think PCVR will always exist in terms of a niche going forward. Simulation-based games, races, Microsoft Flight Simulators in general, and all of these things will demand a PC, and PCVR could exist just as that niche on its own. I hope that what we're experiencing here is a lull in investment in PCVR, sort of highlighted by the lack of Facebook's investment in this now. But hopefully, given a little bit more time, we can come back and we can get the bigger studios to start to invest in this if they see it worthwhile. And that's the big question. I'm not sure if it will get to that point. I hope it will. And I feel like we're heading down a path here in this podcast where we're a little bit doom and gloom. And I don't want to be like that. But I am trying to be realistic on this as well.
Yeah. Okay. So, Chris, bouncing over to you really quick. What is your thoughts in terms of like Gary's saying, okay, PC VR is not dead, and it's not if you're okay with, miscellaneous games. But what if you do want, are we going to even get another Walking Dead type game for PC VR, or is it going to be a Quest 3 game? Are we going to get I don't know. I'm trying to think of big piece, so Sniper Elite VR, it came out on PC VR. It was also on Quest and stuff. But are future announcements like that just going to be Quest? And are we basically going to be dealing with a game like Jet Island made by a smaller developer? That's a great game. It's a fantastic game, wonderful game, looks incredible in a Valve Index. But is that basically going to be the best we can hope for?
It might be. It's really sad because Facebook is leading this whole ecosystem, and I don't think it had to be that way. I don't think any of us thought it would be that way. The only investment into games has been, Facebook and Oculus. Just what's going on with Valve, HTC, all these other VR companies. Those are the ones that I thought would be pushing PC VR forward and investing in games and helping this stuff out. But I mean, I think we came into this position ourselves when Oculus was the only person funding AAA studios to make VR games, and now that doesn't make sense for them. They decided, right? So now it doesn't make sense for anybody, because the only way it made sense to make a VR game at all in the past was because Facebook gave you all the money up front, basically. So now if you don't have that job security, no developer's gonna make something for this platform, So I guess the best we can hope for is a Quest game that is ported to PC in a nice way, or started as a PC game and they just lower the asset quality for Quest. That's what I hope for. But again, the only people funding these VR games still is Facebook, and they're forcing everyone to do Quest games. So it is a kind of depressing state, and that's why there's only indie games really coming out. I just wish some other company would have done something by now. I feel like HTC is a sad shell of what it used to be. I don't know. They had so much promise to be a second Oculus player in the field and give money to these things, and they just turned it into business, B2B, which I guess B2B is booming. As someone said that in chat earlier, if you do a business VR stuff, that's all doing fantastic, which totally makes sense. But
from a consumer point of view, looking from the outside in, from a consumer, it's difficult because that HTC were at the pinnacle at the release of the launch of the Vive, and since then, from what I'm seeing, they've just steadily decreased from a consumer point of view in terms of interest. I've got almost no interest of what HTC are doing now, and it is a shame. You're right, Chris. Yeah.
Well, it makes sense. They weren't doing they they were handed all the hardware, the know-how
Yeah.
by Valve on a silver platter. All they had to do was manufacture it. And I'm in manufacturing. Manufacturing is very hard, right? So there's a reason why Valve went to HTC and say, we can't do this. We need you to get these things in boxes and ship them around the world. But right, HTC didn't really do anything. All that technical and that development, like that's all Valve, right? That's why HTC is stalled out, because Valve said, hey, we've figured out how to do some manufacturing. We're going to do some of this stuff ourselves now. And that left HTC holding the ball. They tried to pivot with the Cosmos and tried to do their own thing, but it didn't go anywhere. They had tons of issues. I still to this day, and I'm on record saying it here, I thought the Cosmos was a good idea, just executed poorly. So yeah, I just want to chime in. That's what's up with HTC.
Steve,
No, that's
real
true.
quick,
But then
though,
where's Valve? What
Yeah,
happened to
there's
Valve? Why
that.
did they drop the ball?
Yeah, 3 VR games. Where's the next two? Or is that like that was like, oh yeah, we just said that for a second, but now I mean actually this is so we're not we don't want to talk about like what Valve is going to do next hardware wise, but Steve, going back to you, like Valve from a software standpoint, isn't can't we blame them a little bit, because like Facebook has obviously left the building when it comes to PCVR, and you would think Valve would have some sort of incentive to want to keep PCVR a thing, unless Valve is like secretly making a standalone, which, we'll get into that later when we get into the Valve hardware possibilities. But what about like a second Valve game? Do you think that's happening?
I don't know. Valve is like, it's like the pothead that works at your favorite restaurant, right? Like it's good food. He or she gives great service, but like they don't seem very motivated, right? They're just in a good spot. They're happy where they are, and they just kind of go with the flow, probably listen to a little Grateful Dead or something, right? So that's the vibe I get from Valve, right? They just do things on their own pace. They're bloated with money. Gabe doesn't need shit from anybody, so they get around to what they get around to on their own timeline. So that's what I think is up with Valve. I think they have the capability. I think if they were more motivated from an investor perspective or something to carpe diem and really attack the market, that they could probably do a lot of good. But that motivation doesn't seem to be there.
You know
Oh,
what I
and
think?
to answer your question though, you said, will we see another VR game from Valve? I don't know. Like I could see, yeah, like they have the core assets there, but I also see them not doing it. So I'm in the middle, wishy-washy answer.
Yeah, one thing I could think about in regards to Valve. See, the problem with Valve is they take so long. Like even if they really were working on other VR games, like another Half-Life Alyx level game, but in a completely different universe, a completely different IP or something like that. But even if they were doing that, it takes so long for it to happen that they could have had plans for it to come out last Christmas, and we're not going to get it for a couple more Christmases. And that just if they're going to be the PCVR platform holder, like if Valve was going to try to like hold up PCVR themselves in a certain way, one suggestion I would have for them is, why don't they look into making deals with third-party companies to be like, hey, we'll half fund this game with you. We'll fund half of it, or we'll give you, like when it's on Steam, we're only going to take a 10% cut instead of a third, like some kind of like helpful deals that Valve could make where they almost act as a Facebook that's helping to fund things, but not to the same degree as Facebook, because it's not really their platform that they, the games could be on Epic Game Store, the games could be on, these different like humble bundle places and stuff like that. Gary, do you have a thought about that?
Well, I was just thinking, yeah, I mean that's a great suggestion on the one hand. I do think like with Valve, it's plain to see with Valve, they do believe in VR. They think it's fantastic technology. They've done all of this for many years. They've been working like the past decade. They've been working on this stuff. So there's got to be something inherent in what Valve, the personnel at Valve, do believe in VR. I think Gabe absolutely believes in VR as a fantastic way to play games and do that kind of stuff. The thing is, I wonder with Valve if they thought we'll release this headset, show how much we believe in VR, we'll make a Half-Life game, by the way, which people have wanted for a ridiculous amount of time. Then that will spur on other developers to start creating content for this platform. It's not happened. Half-Life Alyx is a great game, but it's not spurred on really to the extent which perhaps they might have hoped. And this is a big issue. I think Valve, they're swimming in money in some ways, but they don't. It's almost like a half step. And I hesitate saying that because they are really invested in VR. They've got a great headset out there. They've done this with Half-Life Alyx. It's really not a half step, but they're not doing enough, or perhaps they've done what they expected to spur on other stuff. And Valve can't do it on their own. They need other developers to get on board with this.
You know, the worst part is that Valve released Half-Life Alyx, and it was so good that every other title on PCVR doesn't feel nearly as good, and it makes you not want to play PCVR anymore. Like they actually ended up making a game that's so good that no developer can make anything close to it. So like, why even try? Like, I get what they were trying to do, but they really screwed that up. I think it's hard. Like I finally played some of Half-Life Alyx and I love it, but that doesn't make me want to go back and play anything else really on PCVR.
Chris, I want to see you do.
I say they didn't set a good cadence with Half-Life Alyx by giving it away to index owners. They should have just sold the index for $940 and then let people buy Alyx so there'd be some actual purchase metrics on it. And see, instead, like, we don't really know how it performed economically at all, and we have no data, nothing to really help there, and I think that was sort of a mistake.
Since we were gonna wait to talk about like Valve's potential hardware ambitions and stuff, but since we're into Valve right now, why don't we just go ahead and also get into that a little bit? So here's the thing about Valve. We got the original index. All right. And people have their views on the index. Most people love it. I mean, look, overall, it's a really good headset. It's expensive. It has a couple downsides. But right now, I think like if you really want the best consumer level headset, general consumer level headset, it's probably the best headset out there. I think we all pretty much agree on that. We also know that Valve has these like brain computer interface ambitions. And this is what I find weird about this whole thing, because Gabe, like we've seen Gabe in some different interviews and stuff where they're talking about brain computer interface. I think there was like some kind of interview with Gabe's son where he's talking for like 40 minutes about brain computer interfaces and all the stuff that we're doing there. We of course had the statement from Gabe that like the Matrix isn't as far as you people think, like we're close to it, so you have all these like cryptic sayings. And when I heard all of this, and especially because of the head strap, I always thought like it made perfect sense to me. It's like, oh, I get it, these VR headsets are a Trojan horse to get brain computer interface into a lot of people's hands so that they can start doing experiments with just reading brain signals in the beginning, not writing, not any kind of that, or like interfacing with the video game so much, but just like reading how people react when they're in a horror level, when they're in this part of the game or whatever. And to me, I thought that this made it simple that Valve will have another headset and another headset and another headset, because they gotta eventually start getting these headsets that have these brain computer interfaces woven into it so that they can start getting the statistics from that. Steve, what do you think about that? I mean, is that a thing, or is it just too far off and they're like, it's just not going to happen?
I've not tracked that closely, honestly. I've always felt like it was in that, where we're spending some money and some energy here, but nothing seems even remotely imminent enough that I've really even given it any critical thought. I think from a sci-fi type perspective, and John Westra in chat says, it'd be the privacy battle over the next 5 years. I think that element of it is interesting. But maybe Gary has some thoughts. Maybe that's going to be in the next memory engine too.
No, maybe not. But I personally think BCI. I mean, it's related technology anyway. So BCI with virtual reality, using it in conjunction with that, it's related technology anyway. I think I sort of agree with Steve. I have not really been tracking BCI either too much. And there are people that say that it's really close. Gabe himself, like you mentioned, he says that it's really close. Let's not also forget though that Gabe said that wireless is a solved problem, when we've still not seen any kind of wireless attachment for the Valve Index. He said that in 2017. So, I think we can take this BCI stuff with a pinch of salt. They've got all of these patents out, and with regards to BCI, and Gabe's son is involved heavily in that technology as well. So I'm sure it will see some kind of this stuff in the future. It's difficult to make any comment on it because I don't know, really. I don't know where it's going or what it could lead to.
Yeah,
unfortunately. Go ahead.
Well, real quick, just to explain what I'm talking about here, I don't mean like I'm expecting like some BCI revolution coming really soon from Valve. What I'm trying to say is, so the thing is, like, the Index itself, I kind of thought this might be like a one-off project for Valve, primarily from the standpoint that you've got these control, think of how many RMA deals Valve has had to do. People sending in controllers, sending them back, sending them in, sending them back. Think of how many I would think Gaben and company would be like, this whole hardware shit, forget this. We're not doing hardware anymore. It's not even worth it. Yeah, the Index is always sold out. It's always sold out, so they must be selling them. But are they really making money? Like, is it really a making money operation for them? I would think with all the RMAs and everything, it's not really a money making operation. But when I found out about the whole BCI thing and how they're so into BCI, my theory was that this is a legitimate reason for them to have an Index 2, because the Index 2 could have some of that built into the strap, not where it's like they're going to be advertising it and it's like, yeah, you're going to be using BCI in all your games and it's going to be doing not that they would be doing that, but that they would be collecting data. And so they would basically say, you would be able to go into options and maybe completely turn off the BCI data, but it would be like, hey, if you want to help us, we're looking to the BCI future, leave that turned on. We'll be able to get valuable information. It's going to be anonymous. And so I thought that would be a reason for them to stay into the hardware game, because I don't know, why would they stay into the hardware game with all these RMAs and everything? Chris, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Like, what's their long-term play with all this stuff? I don't know. I just went on the Steam website and the first thing on their homepage is still the Index. So they must still care about VR to some extent. But I feel like Valve has this problem, kind of like, it reminds me of Tesla in a lot of ways, where Elon Musk has all these great ideas that he says, and then they never come out, or they come out half-baked like 5 years later. Full self-driving on Teslas is still pretty scary and not very good, and only a few people have it, even though for years he's been saying, oh, everyone's going to get a button to have it like tomorrow or next week. He said that last week, by the way, and still hasn't happened, so that's kind of funny. But Valve is a company that's so split. They do way too many things, and who knows how like any of these teams are even making anything happen. You got the Steam Deck that just came out, and like, that's cool, but there's a team doing that. There's a team keeping Steam as a platform working. Apparently there's some game developers in there making Half-Life Alyx or something, but like, they seem like they're doing way too many different things. I wish instead of the Steam Deck, they would have done an Index 2 if they really cared about that, because otherwise it just seems like they're just doing all the, like you said, like one-off things just because they can, because they have money. That's kind of what it feels like. Like, oh, we'll just do a portable thing because we can. And oh yeah, there's no VR headsets anymore. We'll make one. Seems like they have way too much money to actually prioritize anything. It's pretty sad.
Yeah, it would be nice. Do you guys remember that interview that was like a number of years ago where Gabe was at that one table and there was a bunch of other like the VR people? They were all at that table. They had like water bottles and stuff. And Gabe was saying, yeah, we're going to have headsets with like 300 hertz refresh and, all this, and like I think that's where he said the wireless problem is solved, right? And Gary, going back to the wireless problem being solved, what about the rumors that potentially like the graphical hardware, the CPU, the stuff that is in the Steam Deck could potentially find its way into a standalone headset? Is there any possibility that Valve would want to try to get into the standalone VR game because maybe they see the fact that Facebook has like 98% of the standalone market on lock? That is that a threat to them, or no, that PC is where Valve is. They're all about the PC. But if that's the case, then why do we even have the Steam Deck in the first place? It's almost like they're looking at the Nintendo Switch as some kind of threat.
Yeah, well, I think if they could produce a standalone VR headset which could do what the Steam Deck is doing in terms of basically playing any, they've said pretty much any PC game, flat PC game will run on the Steam Deck. Now, if they could do that for a standalone VR headset which would run any Steam VR game, then I think they would jump to that. I just don't think that's possible, unfortunately. And the thing is, what we're seeing at the moment as well, we've got reports of developers that are getting these development units of the Steam Deck, and they're starting to run VR on them. So we've had a couple of these, and that's all well and good. But 90%, I would say 90 to 95% of Steam VR games won't run natively on a Steam Deck. It just won't happen at a reasonable performance. So what they would need to do is have a separate standalone library which is optimized for this standalone VR headset. Do any of you guys see that happening? The amount of infrastructure that they would need to get to do that would probably be something that they're not interested in, especially with the PC bias that they have. I think this is the issue. This is why the Steam Deck is only coming out now. It's because hardware has got to the point where this standalone little portable device can run pretty much any PC game. I don't see that happening for a standalone VR headset just yet, and probably not for many years. So I struggle with the discussions around this, honestly. I don't know what people expect. Do people expect Valve to have a standalone VR headset which will run PC Steam VR games natively? Personally, I can't see that happening. If they can do it, great, but I don't see how they can do it. So the contradiction is that they'd need their own standalone library, which is a lot of effort.
Yeah,
I think it's
Steve,
a function of the VR bubble, right? When you're in, I don't know if we've talked about the bubble much, but when I left the VR bubble, doing VR Roundtable every week, I quickly saw perspective differently. And when you're in that bubble, you look at a portable piece of hardware from Valve, and what's the first thing you think? Oh, VR or Valve's version of a standalone. I think Anthony's answer earlier when he said they want to have the App Store, and I think that's where Valve's interested in, is they want Steam Mobile, sort of the Nintendo Switch approach. Now, does that mean eventually someday down the road we have a portable headset from Valve? Possibly, but I don't think it's imminent just because they're releasing the Steam Deck. I think that's more of a move. To get people to be on the Steam platform in more places.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, that basically pretty much covers most of what we're looking at here from Valve. So we've talked about the Quest a little bit. We talked about the PCVR, the kind of lack of AAA gaming in PCVR. One thing that we haven't touched on yet, of course, is PlayStation VR, which, if you go back to the beginning of VR, it was always, you had Oculus and you had HTC. Valve wasn't even involved in the thing, really. And then, of course, you had PlayStation, and those were like the three big champions of VR when you go back to 2016. And PlayStation VR, it's an interesting subject, right? We could probably do an entire show just talking about Sony's experience with VR. Are they happy with, like if Sony could go back in time and just wipe away any investment they've ever made in VR, would they do that, or are they happy with what's going on in VR? Are they excited about PlayStation VR 2? Gary, we know that PlayStation VR 2 we might get a reveal of PlayStation VR 2 in December of this year. I think there's like a PlayStation experience that is going to be happening. And there's a rumor that we might get kind of our first look at what it really looks like, a general feel of it, kind of like a teaser, like way back in the days when we first saw Morpheus, but we didn't know a lot about it, but you got a little bit of information on it. What do you think, Gary, about Sony? Are they happy with their involvement in VR? Do you think they made money off VR, off the original PlayStation VR? What do you think's going on in Sony land?
Well, I would hope that they've made money on the original PSVR. That's really what I would hope. And the fact that they're pursuing this anyway would suggest that they have. I do think it's interesting because I've not got a PlayStation 5 at the moment. I've not even got a PSVR anymore. I sold that. But one of the interesting statements that they've or rumored around all of this stuff about the PSVR 2 and the PlayStation 5 is that they are trying to go down this path. And we could probably go over to Steve with regards to this because he's mentioned this before, but having flat games having a VR mode inherent within them, which might be some kind of inbuilt thing into the hardware where you can just render the game in 3D in your VR headset and play through a standard God of War game or something like that with a PSVR 2 with a gamepad and that kind of stuff. The rumors are is that they're trying to get some kind of VR mode for flat games anyway. And that's something they didn't do with the past PSVR. It was all sort of bespoke, built for VR games. Now, the fact, just to get back to your original point, Anthony, the fact that they're pursuing VR in this generation would suggest that I think that they don't regret it at all. I think it also offers a unique selling point over the Xbox. Whether it's a huge deal for people or not, I still think it offers that extra ability that people might look to as consumers. I think it offers that. So yeah, I mean, yeah, for me, I don't think they regret it, and I think I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with PSVR 2.
Do you have a PlayStation 5?
No, I've got still got a PS4. I've not got a PlayStation 4. I will get one when the PSVR 2 comes out. I'll probably get one then.
Why?
So I can play some PSVR 2 games.
But the reason I asked that is because, like, imagine so you're going to buy a PlayStation 5 and a PlayStation VR 2. What is that like? What's the number going to be on that receipt that you get? When you pay for it, is it going to start with one? Like, is it going to be like $1,000 purchase? And no, seriously though, yeah. Why not take that money and put it towards like the next NVIDIA card or something? I mean, I just think this is an honest question here.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I think the answer that I would say is simply because we don't, at this stage, it's difficult to say, but we don't know. Sony have a lot of weight in terms of developers, and they could give us experiences we can't get anywhere else. And that's really probably the number one reason why I would pick one up. At the moment, if it's the same old titles that I can get on my PC or on Quest or, advanced versions of Quest games, I probably won't bother. But I'm hoping that they have a certain sway over developers and will give us some of the deeper, bigger games that we were talking about earlier.
All righty. Okay. Chris, why don't we bounce over to you in terms of PlayStation VR? And the question I have for you, Chris, is like, so we know that Sony has decided, like, their decision with PlayStation VR 2 was a wired product. And this disturbed a lot of people. A lot of people thought, oh man, come on. This thing isn't coming out until 2022 and it's going to have a wire. Are you kidding me? But then you have the hardcore PlayStation people out there are like, of course it's going to have a wire, man. You got to have high-end VR. This little portable crap isn't doing nothing. What do you think about that decision first off? And what do you think about Sony, like, long-term in VR? Do you feel like they're committed to VR and they're always going to be a factor in this game?
Yeah, that's a interesting thing that it's going to have a wire, but it makes sense when you think about the kind of people who have a PlayStation, like you just said, they're ultra hardcore gamers. They want the best fidelity, no latency, stuff like that. So in a way, PlayStation's kind of turning into the high end of VR, and they're like funding these VR developers to make games, maybe double A games. They're not fully triple A games, but they're actually going to be paying some real developers to make VR titles that are longer than like a 20-minute experience. So that's kind of interesting when you start to think about it more and you see the controller picture that Sony put out there. Like the controllers look pretty cool and like they might actually be really good. So, is PSVR 2 going to end up being the high-end platform for VR? That'd be kind of sad, but maybe it's not so bad.
That's a good point, actually, that you bring up, because imagine this scenario, Chris. We were talking about the death of PCVR, right? The death of AAA gaming on PCVR. What if Sony is actually going to bring AAA PCVR gaming to PCVR? Because what if this PlayStation VR 2 works great with a PlayStation 5, but what if you can also connect it to your PC? We know hasn't Sony brought over some of their games, like some of their PlayStation 4 games onto the PC, like Horizon Zero Dawn or whatever. So maybe Sony's going to be a threat to Valve now. I mean, how weird would that be, right?
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, I think, some of these games that get developed for the PS5 VR stuff will end up making their way to PC, and maybe that'll be what's fueling the PC VR games. Who knows?
Yeah. Okay. So, Steve, going over to you, what do you think about that last idea too, in terms of Sony selling more games on PC and maybe allowing their new VR headset to work on PC as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack with Sony, and I've always kind of been the resident Sony fanboy of our panel here. Let's remember that the PlayStation VR is the number one or the number two selling VR headset to date. I don't know where Quest 2 is. They might be close, or maybe the Quest 2 is really outpaced it. We don't know. But the PSVR 1 was relatively successful. And I don't know if they've made any money. I think one indicator that maybe they have made money is that they were offloading that old PS Move junk, that they had no other use for. So they inevitably kept costs relatively low for the time. So I have a lot of hope. My crystal ball is broken. I don't know what we're going to see, but I have a lot of hope for PSVR 2. It's going, the thing that they said, and Gary, you mentioned it, where they said that they want to find a way, and I'm paraphrasing the quote, I don't remember exactly how they said it, but they want to find a way to bridge or overlap flat gaming with VR gaming. And you're right. I have said that ad nauseum for years, long before Sony ever made this comment. It's like they were watching old Roundtable episodes. And I feel economically that is a good way to address the elephant in the room of high fidelity development. And, if you're making GTA 6, let's put VR in it as well, right? You don't have to make something that is only for a VR market. And, a lot of our conversation here today has been on the niche, this niche there, this niche there. Casual people don't care. Like if you're in that VR bubble, you hear people bitch and moan about, well, I want to stand in my room and I want to do everything with my hands. When I'm playing Skyrim, I want to go over there and pick up that watermelon and poke my fingers into it and all this stuff. And it's like the wider gaming community isn't that worried about it. The wider gaming community enjoyed Blood and Truth, and Blood and Truth, I enjoyed the hell out of Blood and Truth, and that game was on rails, and it used motion controllers, but it wasn't what the vocal minority said VR must be. Yet everybody that played it, or most people that played it, seemed to like it. So I think there's opportunity to do Blood and Truth type things with a flat gaming sort of overlap that maybe it isn't fully featured VR where you can pick earwax out of your ear with your cap sense finger or these trivial things, but I think the core gaming experience can be there. And I think a lot of people would like that, myself included. I think person is in chat, and he said earlier, and I noticed his comment didn't say anything about it, but he said, or she, I don't know, sorry if I got your gender wrong, but that their top, some of their top gaming experiences have been modded flat games. So when I think of that, I think of Alien Isolation, Outer Wilds Worlds, one of those.
Outer Wilds, yeah.
Yeah, Outer Wilds. Firewatch recently, I think, got the mod. I played Below Zero with a mod. So these flat games that are being modded, people are really enjoying them, in part because there's not a lot of, high-end AAA VR development in PC land. So Sony has a market here that they can go after. I know I will personally, if Naughty Dog does whatever their next thing's going to be, and if it had a VR mode, that's how I'm going to play it. I have a big theater with a 138-inch screen, 4K, HDR, all that crap. But if I can play these games in VR, that's where I'm going to choose to play them. And I do want immersive experiences, but not at the cost of being anemic. If you go to a place like NeoGAF, or you listen to the general gaming community and you hear them talk about VR, one of the things that they will describe is that VR can be anemic. Yeah, you can do things with your hands, but like a job simulator, but it's kind of the scope of what you're doing is mundane. And there's a type of person, of which I am one of those type of persons, that want a wider scope, and I will sacrifice that hand interactivity and that nuanced level of interaction for something that is able to cater a wider scope. So I have, to round up everything I just said, I have a lot of hope for where PSVR 2 could end up. I don't know that it's going to get there. But from where we're standing right now in late September of 2021, it seems like for a VR consumer like me, it might be my best chance of getting what I want in this market.
Chris, going back over to you really quick, do you have a PlayStation 5?
No.
No.
No,
Okay,
and I don't even have a I only have a Quest 2 and a PC too, but yeah, my fiance has a PS4. We'll get a PS5, I'm sure. I'm sure we'll get a PSVR 2 as well.
Really? Because like my question would be is like, what would it take? Like, assuming that your fiance wasn't like wanting it for some other reason or something, but what would it take for you to be like, yeah, I'm gonna buy a PlayStation, I'm gonna spend all this money on a PlayStation 5 and then also all this money on this PSVR 2 headset? Is there something like technology wise that Sony could do with that headset where it's like, wow, I didn't know that Sony would be the one to do this, that could get you hyped into that? Or is there a particular franchise that they have that could be done incredibly well in VR that could make you want to spend all that money and do that?
Yeah, I doubt there's going to be any crazy hardware advancements, though they're pretty good at comfort, which is nice. But this does make me a little bit excited that this is a way that we'll get these AAA games, because it's true, they're actually really good. Like when you just play a AAA game in VR, it already has all the scope you need, and there's a lot to do, and it's very immersive. So I think that's why I would get one, so I could experience all these games that have a VR mode if they end up doing that. And then I think that lets the market naturally grow over time. I feel like given the option, like Steve, I would choose VR if I had the option. And what happens when over half of the people playing the game are playing it in VR because they like it more? I think that might be a good path to the future we want. So that, I don't know, the Sony's making me optimistic now. I've been pretty down, but Sony could pull it out. So I would want to support that if I saw any big games that had VR support on there.
Yeah, an interesting point that you just brought up there is like the fact that these developers, because think of the original PlayStation VR, the developers that had to work on the original PlayStation VR were kind of working with one hand tied behind their back, because they had to make it run on the original PlayStation VR vanilla and then the pro version, and then they have these controllers that were just thrown in at the last second that weren't designed for VR. They had a camera that just had a cone of vision from just like, it was, it wasn't you weren't completely in the game. You weren't in a little holodeck kind of situation like you have with Quest and all the other. So now, for the first time ever, we're going to see what London Studio and some of these really talented developers, because look at what they did even with their hands tied behind the back. They were competing head to head with some of the best stuff we had on PC, and they had this weaker hardware and they had their hands tied behind their back. And now they're going to be let out of jail with a legitimate VR platform that is going to be, free flowing, 360 degrees. Gary, what do you think about this? Do you think that, what if Sony is like the surprise of the whole deal? Maybe we're all going to be PlayStation VR players, and like Jarilla's going to have a PlayStation 5 and a PlayStation VR 2 headset.
Well, I was just thinking as well, because basically going back to what I was saying before in terms of development sway that they have, it's entirely possible that they could come out with some of the things that we've basically been complaining about throughout this entire episode. We want the deeper, bigger titles perhaps, and the standalone isn't quite delivering that, and PSVR 2 could perhaps at least bridge the gap in some ways with that. While you were talking there, actually, I was just thinking back to person's comment regarding mods and stuff, and I was just thinking about some of my favorite games in VR of all time, and pretty much all of them have come from flat games. No Man's Sky, Elite Dangerous, Microsoft Flight Simulator, Fallout 4, Skyrim. These have all originated as flat games and then made the transition. And also with what he or she was saying was that the mods. So mods are one point which sort of relates to the PSVR 2 side, because mods on PC games have done incredible work, like what Steve was saying earlier. And if they can do, it doesn't even necessarily mean to be the case that we get PlayStation VR 2 that has this VR version of a flat game, which still needs to be played on a gamepad. I'm sure they could have that option as an easy option for them to do, for developers to just put in this VR mode. But when you see the work that single-handedly modders have done in terms of incorporating motion controllers and stuff like that in the Outer Wilds and Valheim and stuff like this, single people have made these games playable in the way that we want them to be in VR. So it's not inconceivable that PlayStation could also, throw an extra million in a developer's direction to add all of this extra support as well. And with the success of the PlayStation VR, as we hope it was, quite a reasonable success, then that could have given them the confidence to push money in that direction. I would love that. I would absolutely love it.
You just mentioned single people doing these mods, right? Well, there is a single person that was working on a Halo VR mod, ladies and gentlemen, and that person has been hired by 343 Industries, right? The modern day developers of Halo. So maybe VR for the Xbox VR coming soon. Steve, really quickly, what about Microsoft and VR? Like, actually, we can talk real quick, just Microsoft in general. They had these Windows mixed reality headsets. We never got proper Windows mixed reality, like completely redesigned controllers and everything. So Steve, really quick, any thoughts about Microsoft and VR?
I don't have too much, and it's a shame. We had that long-running argument on if Xbox ever got VR, would it be a Windows MR headset, and I had always said no. There's no question it would be an Xbox branded piece of hardware. And to that point, I think I don't think Sony will release hardware for the PC. I do think they may bring some software over, which is great. But yeah, I don't see PSVR 2 plugging into your PC anytime. But on Xbox, there was kind of funny games and Greg Miller's podcasts. Well, I guess group now, like they're legit business with many staff members, but they had a podcast not too long ago that had Phil Spencer on it, and Phil Spencer, he had made the comment, VR came up, and of course, the focus of the show wasn't VR in any way, so it was very quick passing comment, but he had made the comment, well, Quest 2's out there, and I like Quest 2, and we have no interest in getting in that space. So, but he had said, additionally, he had said that that he felt standalone was important for VR. Now that's a cop out, I think, in a way, regardless of how he actually feels. It's a way for him to deflect and say, well, we're not doing VR because we think standalone's that, and we're not entering the standalone space. So it kind of gives him an easy out in the conversation. But by the mere fact of him name dropping an Oculus product, to me suggests, people like him won't normally mention other products by name if they plan on directly competing with it. In a lot of ways there. So I think we're going to get nothing from Xbox anytime soon, if ever. If VR were to get really big, I think they would inevitably have to enter the space. But for the sake of this conversation, they're not entering it anytime soon.
Yeah, real quick, Gary, regarding Microsoft and VR. My question is because if we go back to Facebook and the standalone VR market, right? If we just look at standalone and you look at market share, I mean, I don't know the exact percentages, but it's got to be 90 something percent. Like Facebook has control of the standalone VR market in the same way that Nintendo had control of the home video game market in like 1987 or something like that. It's just total, complete dominance, a complete and utter monopoly. I mean, back in that time with Nintendo, they did have the Sega Master System, but nobody gave a damn. So yeah, there might be a couple other little things floating out there, but nobody gives a damn. Facebook has just complete monopoly here. And my question is, if you're a company like Sony, they're in the game, they don't have a competitor to that standalone dominance, but they're in the game in some area. I just find it fascinating that Microsoft as a corporation is not concerned by this. They're totally unconcerned, or at least that's the way they're acting.
Yeah, they do seem to be that way. It's a shame, and I think that their focus is just in a different direction. It's like what we've seen from the release of their latest consoles, both Xbox and Sony, is Sony and Microsoft are attacking this generation of consoles, this latest generation of consoles, in completely different directions. Sony are still going for the exclusives and that kind of stuff, these bigger AAA exclusives, and then Xbox is really doubling down on Game Pass and that kind of stuff, and they're separating from that point of view. I do agree. I think that with Steve, I think that at a certain point, if VR gets big enough, then Microsoft will have to enter the arena. The other thing, what you were saying there about Facebook. So Facebook must have, yeah, you're right. I agree. I think they must have a huge, the market share, the lion's share of the VR market at this moment in time. What is their long-term plan with it, though? We've seen this collaboration with Ray-Ban, and now they are moving over to this kind of smart glasses. Eventually, Zuckerberg has directly said that will eventually lead to AR glasses. Is the technology that they are developing on the standalone VR side just simply a gateway to get to this point, this AR glasses future that they really want to be a part of? But that aside, I mean, that's probably a long way off anyway. But that aside, I think that it's probably difficult to look at Facebook and say that they don't have this dominance at this moment in time, and we need somebody to come in. Microsoft don't seem to be concerned. Sony are attacking them from a completely different direction. They're not there. It's a weird thing to think about. There's not really anybody, is there? There's nobody that are doing what Facebook are doing at the moment.
No, there isn't.
Does that make them a genius, or does that make them stupid?
Well, it makes them, they own the beach. See, the thing is, going up against Facebook in the standalone arena is like going up against Mike Tyson in his prime. Maybe you'll still win, but you're going to get your ass beat bad. You're going to come out bloodied to a pulp. And I don't know that any of these other companies, I mean, we can ask the same question for like Google and for some of these other corporations out there. Maybe Amazon could get involved in this thing. NVIDIA could possibly get in here at some point. There could be some weird wild card competitors that could come in. But it's like, if anybody wants to go toe to toe with Facebook, like they know their war chest, they know that they're pot committed to this right now. And that's another topic. Like, when is Facebook going to be disillusioned with the slow progress that's going on in this arena? Because remember when Zuckerberg like first got on stage, like way back in the days, they were like, this is like a 10-year thing. Well, it's been like 5 years, and they're really not, like, 1 billion people in VR. We're nowhere close to that. So there's a little bit of a worry there.
He said, didn't he say 10 million is what they require in order to make a sustainable ecosystem?
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me if they've got to at least approaching 10 million with the Quest and Quest 2 combined. Based on some of the stuff that we've heard over the past few months, it might not be, it's probably not 10 million, but it might not be far away. And I put something on Twitter the other day where I said one of my sort of outlandish predictions for Facebook Connect is that Zuckerberg will come on stage and say we've hit 10 million people in VR. It probably won't happen, but I don't think it's that far away from those 10 million users.
Yeah, I think if they count the Quest 1 number, like all Quest headsets, I think it might hit 10 million. I really do. But we don't have this topic on it. We're coming to the end of the show. We're starting to wind this down a little bit. And one quick topic I want to try to insert in here at the last possible minute is VR headsets in general, man. So let's just go back for a second, because like I had a Valve Index, right? I sold it, and I sold it with this idea. I thought for sure, like if you asked me a year ago, Anthony, what are the chances that it's going to be damn near October of 2021 and there would not be one single major headset to come out this year that would be interesting and exciting, that might get you to run out and buy it? I would have thought, no, of course there's going to be a, Samsung, the Buggo Vision, all these different things, right? We have not, like, where are the headsets? I mean, I don't care if it's standalone, PC. I'm more talking about PCVR, like a replacement PCVR headset. So why don't I send it over? We'll start with Chris. And Chris, like, when you're thinking of, like I know you don't have your PCVR setup hooked up right now, but could there be a headset that could come out that could feature some kind of advanced resolution or some kind of built-in body tracking or some kind of giant field of view or facial tracking or, unbelievable crystal clear pass-through AR capabilities that are amazing? We haven't talked about Apple. There's still rumors that Apple might get into this mix in this second half of 2022. But Chris, what's your thoughts on like a higher end headset?
Yeah, it's a weird spot we're in here, because I feel like if a better headset came out, I have almost no reason to buy it, because there's not going to be any games that work with the cool feature it has or anything like that. I think like we're purely in like a software drought right now. And because of our software drought, like there's no hardware coming either, because why would you release a headset right now, with a new feature if, half the developers that made games like don't exist anymore. So they're not going to update their games for whatever cool new thing the headset has. And I mean, it has to be Valve that introduces a new thing basically and built it into their game. Otherwise, no indie developer is going to add a niche of a niche feature, which is sad, but it's where we are. So I think that's why there hasn't been any new headsets, but I still can't believe Oculus got rid of the Rift S. I really liked the Rift S. It's so sad.
Yeah. Gary, what about going back over to you? Are you at all surprised, Samsung or LG or, I mean, Hewlett Packard, of course, they got their Reverb G2. But, I don't know if you've ever tried one of those or if you experimented with that, but I feel like there's it's just the controllers, right? And
Yeah.
it's the tracking, and that kind of goes back to Microsoft, and we didn't really touch that too much. Like, I guess we have to kind of assume that Microsoft did that one Windows mixed reality thing. They spent a little bit of time on that, and then it's like, okay, we're done. We've had our fun. We're done. We're walking away. I mean, there were these videos though with Microsoft. Like, there was some kind of Microsoft research video where this guy's like walking around a campus, and it's like creating this like giant like metaverse game that is happening. Like, he's in like a backpack thing, and he's like free walking around a campus, and like the game itself is like recognizing physical structures and like putting that into part of the game, almost like Ready Player One, where you see those guys running across and they're like in Halo, but in real life they're like running down a street and they're in VR at the same time. So it's like, I don't know, like, has Microsoft really completely given up on VR? But we don't have any PCVR headsets, like any new ones to speak of. Why is that?
It's simply a state of the market. I would imagine it's simply what Chris was saying. If manufacturers can't justify the costs that go into the R&D and the release and the launch of a headset, then that's why. I do think that there is place for newer headsets to come out which focus on the niches in PCVR. Again, simulation-based stuff. Reverb G2, for example, is a headset which is probably favored among simulation fans and people that are into races or, flight simulators and that kind of stuff, based on its unique characteristics. But then you give it sort of general VR fans, and they will complain about the controller tracking and this kind of stuff, which is valid criticism. So I think there's probably a place for a manufacturer to come in and do niche kind of products. We see these niche products in terms of HOTAS sticks and racing wheels and stuff like that. Now, while they're not really mainstream things, most people won't buy a HOTAS to play VR, to play PC games and stuff. But there is a niche for that kind of product, and companies can survive by doing that kind of stuff. So I think there's a niche for those kinds of headsets. But just going back to your original question, I think it simply comes back to the market share and how much they believe they can make from releasing the product. That's why we don't see more. Hopefully Valve will do a new headset.
Yeah, and Steve, obviously for you as well, what is your thoughts on basically like state-of-the-art PCVR headsets, new ones potentially coming out, and almost kind of a drought in this category?
Well, as you asked the question, chat lit up, and several people said COVID, and I think that is possibly a reason. I'm not going to put a lot of stock in COVID itself. Yeah, it's a problem, and it's gumming up supply chains and material access all over the place. But I don't think there was going to be, if COVID never happened, I don't know that we would have a major new headset that would have come out in the last year or whatever. I think it's more of a function of the economy. To me, hardware caught up enough. We talk about facial tracking this, and this many more pixels per eye, this many more frames. I don't think it matters. Like in 2016, and we were playing Brookhaven and Space Pirate Trainer, and we saw the glaring SDE in our HTC Vives. That's all been addressed. Yeah, I'm personally using a Pimax AKX, which is sort of reverb-ish resolution. I don't know that we need anything more. I don't know that I need an AKX. The issue is software. Surprised that I said software is the problem. And I think, unlike 2016, where we needed more resolution, I don't think that's where we are today. If I could snap my fingers and get some facial recognition, facial tracking feature, what would I do with it? But yeah, my widget here has facial recognition and tracking capabilities, but then what, right? You got to have software that's going to leverage the hardware, and I think that's the problem. And this may lead into one of our last topics, but right now VR is predominantly gaming. It has been predominantly gaming. before chat blows me up and talks about all the B2B and talks about all the professionals out in the world, designing cars and whatever, using a VR headset. I'm not ignoring that, but from a consumer perspective, it's just gaming. Ironically, the world's largest social media platform holder hasn't given us a use for VR really, outside of just playing some games. So I think when that is established, the metaverse or whatever you want to call it, when that exists, then I think that will beckon the need for new hardware that can do new things. But as of now, we're just playing games and we don't need anything else, I think, from a hardware perspective right now.
Okay, well, it's great that you brought that up because I want to actually go into that specific area real quick if we could. Is like, I mean, well, we can talk real briefly about like the Quest Pro because it kind of relates to this, right? So a lot of the rumored improvements that could happen with the Quest Pro, and this is something that could be announced very soon when Facebook does their thing, isn't it? Like sometime in October or whatever. I don't know the exact date, but they might announce the Quest Pro there, or maybe they, it's not available yet. You're not going to buy it immediately or anything, but maybe they could say, possibly coming in the spring of 2022. But this idea that it's going to have eye tracking and face tracking, and you just mentioned there, Steve, like, well, great. If we have that, like, what is that going to do? But if it's Facebook, we've seen their advanced avatar systems. We've seen what they're working on, and we don't know that the Quest Pro is going to be capable of that quite so much, because you're not sitting in a place where 10 million cameras are filming you like they have in their Pittsburgh facility where they're testing this in their Facebook reality labs. But so that the headsets themselves are going to have to scan our lower face and track our eyes. But I do believe, like, if we're talking about non-gaming, I think the killer app I really believe that the true killer app for VR is actually going to be person-to-person communication. It's going to be like Zoom video on freaking crack, because it's basically going to be like my mom, who lives in a retirement, like a senior facility. Basically, she has memory problems and stuff, so she has to have like 24-hour care from that kind of a standpoint. But I can easily envision a time where I can be in a headset, they could put her in a headset, she could be, and it's like she's sitting on my couch. I'm seeing her there. I'm seeing her arms move. I'm seeing a little, maybe her hand shaking or something, little things that you just wouldn't realize without the spatial awareness of it. The way her voice is coming to me spatially, I think it's a game changer. I really believe this. Like in like dating and things like that, we have all these dating apps, but like you see a picture of somebody, you have no idea what they're like in real life, but all these different things can be converted into VR, where it's a complete and utter game changer, because the communication of humans, so much of it is nonverbal. And I feel the only thing that I'm worried about, though, is I'm worried about that this Quest Pro doesn't quite get us there. It doesn't get us to those incredible Facebook avatars where people are like, doing all these things with their faces, and it's like, oh my God, it looks almost exactly the same. I don't know. I don't know what the in between is, because right now what we have in these kinds of meeting up apps and big screen beta or whatever it happens to be, I call it the Weeble Wobble. You're like a little Weeble Wobble. You're a little cartoon thing that's just wobbling around, and maybe your hands are moving a little bit, but that's it. And to me, that is not a game changer at all. That does not blow me away. But there are people that are actually blown away by this Weeble Wobble thing, but there's a lot of people that aren't. Gary, what do you think about the Quest Pro, the possibility for facial tracking, eye tracking, the fact that the controllers might actually, the tracking might be cameras on the controllers, which frees up the cameras on the headset to be devoted to other things? Because we know the XR2 can operate with 7 simultaneous cameras, but it can't operate with 8 or 9. But if you now have cameras on the controllers that offload that responsibility to track the cameras on the headset, now you're freeing up these cameras on the headsets to do other things, like, and possibly full color, beautiful full color pass through. Could that potentially be a game changer as well?
It will be on the road to a game changer, definitely. I think the thing to first say about this is that the leaks and the rumors around the Quest Pro, nothing's confirmed at the time that we're recording this, so we need to keep that in mind.
True.
At the same time, though, I think there's probably when I look at these, there seems to be a certain amount of there seem to be genuine. To be honest, some of the photos and things like that, I just get that impression, but we don't know. And I think with regards to facial tracking, eye tracking, and this kind of stuff, it's inevitable that Facebook especially will want this kind of stuff. Facial tracking is going to improve the social experience, like you were saying, Anthony, and the eye tracking will do the same kind of thing as well. But yeah, the Quest Pro leaks. I don't know if we want to talk about this just from that point of view, because it's only been the last couple of days, so this is sort of latest breaking news now. And we've not done a show for 2 years, so we're right up to date now. But the Quest Pro leaks do show that the controllers have cameras in them, which will allow for us to not have any sort of occlusion from the cameras on the headset. So you'll be able to get much better tracking and that kind of stuff. Presumably, they have some kind of inbuilt processing in the controllers themselves. They don't need to relay that camera information to the headset for it to process. I don't know how it would work, but that would obviously impact on battery life of the controllers and stuff like this. But honestly, from what I've seen, just quickly, from what I've seen, I'm going to get a Quest Pro if what we're seeing is true, turns out to be true, because it looks like they're doing things which is actually really quite innovative in that standalone space. We've not seen a headset which has motion controllers with their own cameras in, at least to the best of my knowledge, and going in that direction, doing all of these extra things. Personally, I'm not really a social VR kind of person, but I can understand the attraction of having facial tracking and eye tracking, and I will be getting one of these things if they turn out to be true. I'm sort of gone on a bit of a tangent there, I know, but yeah, I'm just sort of excited about some of the leaks that we're getting at the moment.
Yeah, Chris, I don't know if you saw these controllers and some of the information that's come out that supposedly the headset resolution is basically staying the same. So we're not getting like a giant jump in resolution supposedly, but there will be these extra features, these cameras, and I'm super excited for the pass through, because I believe like just daily use. Yeah, we do have these quests that are out there for $2.99, and somebody could just buy one box and everybody can use it. But I like this future where you put the headset on and you're not seeing like a fuzzy black and white like CCTV footage that you can barely notice what's going on, but you actually have like crystal clear. Because when people put a headset on, sometimes they feel almost a little bit discombobulated, where it's like, I don't have my bearings, like if you're giving somebody a demo or something. But you put a headset on them and they got a crystal clear view of what's really going on in here. And then in the corner, it says like activate VR, and they can just like point to it and bam, it opens up. And then now they're in VR and they can tap their headset and be back to a crystal clear vision. What do you think about that? Do you think it's going to be a big improvement? And also, of course, possibly next gen avatars with the facial tracking, the eye tracking?
Yeah, I think that'd be really great. I use pass through a lot, probably more than most people, and I really love the like double tap to open up pass through on Quest 2. That's like my favorite feature. I use it all the time. So I think that would be incredible if they had, even just adding color to it would be great. Like the problem right now is it's so hard to tell what anything is, and you can't see your screen because you're all in infrared. But yeah, that'd be great. And yeah, I saw the controllers. That'd be really interesting if they ended up putting the cameras in the controllers. Something must be, being announced at this event, because like already you can get, I think it was last weekend or maybe even right now, you can get like 2 Quest 2s for like 1 for half off if you buy 2, which is kind of crazy.
Oh my God. So that means they're dumping another platform.
That's
and now
trying to dump it. But it's kind of hilarious, like bringing up something we were talking about before, that Anthony, I don't know if you've got an invitation to Horizon, but I never did. Did you ever get one to
I
Facebook Horizon?
Yeah, no, I mean, well, not that I got one like sent to my email, but
Yeah.
like somehow I ended up, I still haven't jumped in it though, which
Yeah.
so
So,
because it's a Weeble Wobble. I need
yeah.
something more advanced than Weeble Wobbles.
I know. So, but it looks like I just like looked at the Facebook Connect page and it's like, Zuckerberg is going to talk about bringing the metaverse to life and then it's called Infinite Horizons. So, I'm hoping that we finally get that social platform this year because that would be a huge driving force for me. I don't know if any of you have seen Facebook Horizon workrooms,
Yeah.
but it's honestly it looks really good. And they just use AI to like get the mouths pretty close and the eyes are pretty responsive and it's all hand tracking. It kind of looks great. So if it's that, but like more metaversey, I'm kind of digging it. But that's even on a Quest 2. So maybe hardware's not even an issue. It's more just getting some nice AI in there, some machine learning going on. But I really want to try that because I think that's the big ticket. If I can talk with my parents or something in real life in VR and it feels real. So
Hey, Chris, I have a question. You
yeah,
talked earlier. You're working in automated driving cars and such, and I assume it's for a smallish company. Maybe not, but I'm guessing there's a lot
yeah,
of you young guys around. Are there is there an appetite for collaborating and doing work? I work for a very large company and lots of old people, and I say that as a person with gray hair, and like I know through the pandemic and getting on Zoom and all the different Google Meet and stuff, all the different teleconference, there's always that one person that like doesn't know how to turn their mic on and like that like really struggles, right? And that's with something real easy.
yeah.
How is that going to work? It's sort of a twofold question. I'm just interested. Your company you work for, at least the way I'm visioning it, seems like it'd be the type of company that would be interesting in collaborating with this new tech. And I'm just curious if you all are using anything like it.
Yeah, it would be interesting. Our company is a very strict in-person policy, and I think a lot of that reason is that something like VR isn't good enough yet, nowhere near good enough to replace a real meeting. So all our meetings are real in real life, and anytime we try to do a remote thing, it doesn't work because you can't envision them in person. So my company is probably different than most startups nowadays. I'd say probably most startups would very much like to be full remote and use something like Horizon Workrooms as their only form of meetings. And I think that'd be super cool to experiment with. But yeah, I don't think the tech's there yet for our company.
Yeah, using something all day long like that, like doing your actual work in VR, I still feel like our screen technology, like the refresh rates and stuff like that, like I don't think we're anywhere near that. That's where Gaben was talking about like 300 hertz or whatever, and we haven't heard anything about that in a long time. Um, so at this point in the show, basically we can pretty much go anywhere. Why don't we go? We'll go around the table one more time just to see if there's any specific question or topic anybody wants to throw in. So Gary, back over to you really quick. As we wrap up this show, is there anything you want to get in? Oh, actually, why don't we mention AR real quick? Like we haven't talked about AR at all. AR, is this thing, right? That, is always VR and AR, and we thought AR still hasn't happened. Isn't that crazy? Like there still is not a consumer level AR like I can't go to Best Buy and buy something right now for $699.99 that is a legit AR product that you leave on your face. Like that thing doesn't exist still. Isn't that kind of crazy? Steve, any thoughts on AR?
I don't really have it. I'm going to send it to Gary because he's got a Magic Leap one.
Yeah, I did pick Magic Leap 1 up because I do like AR and I think it's got a lot of potential. And I was just tired of not trying one. There's nowhere you can go to just try this stuff. And I wanted to try one. So I've picked one up on eBay and I've tried it quite a bit. And I'm probably going to sell it on because I've exhausted pretty much everything that I can do with it at this point. But AR, we're getting there. People are mentioning it now. This is the thing. Like Mark Zuckerberg mentioned AR glasses in the way that we want these people to talk about them. Tim Cook doesn't really mention AR glasses. He talks about AR a lot, but he doesn't mention glasses. And Apple just year after year never mention anything to do with wearable AR kind of stuff. I think we're getting closer. The fact that Mark Zuckerberg is talking about it now, it's difficult. I know that you've read a lot or heard a lot, Anthony, about this guy, Carl Guttag, who is a display specialist, and he often comments on AR products and AR companies. And he was a long-time critic of Magic Leap and what they could do. And it turned out that pretty much what he was saying was true. Magic Leap did release a product which did do, it's AR in 2018 when it was released. It is AR at that time, but it's not this magical solution. And I still think that we are many, many years away from getting what we want from AR. Just going back to Ray-Ban Stories, the Facebook and Ray-Ban collaboration, it's clear to see that this is the first step on a road to AR, which I personally think is still 10 years away to get to the point where we have these glasses, at the very least 10 years away. When you look into what is actually required for this kind of future to happen, it just seems like it's so far off at this moment in time, unfortunately. But I'll be following it. I've picked up Magic Leap 1. I'll be selling that. I'll probably get other AR products over the coming years as well.
Real quick, on the Magic Leap 1, what was the most impressive experience you tried on that?
Really, I mean, it's difficult to say. I think there was a lot of, it was impressive. Don't get me wrong. It's not like it's bad at all. It's really impressive, but it's limited. The field of view is something which we all know about and that kind of stuff. I guess the most, the thing that you could tell had most investment in was that Dr. Broadbort's Invaders, which is basically a wave shooter really when it boils down to it. But there's a lot of great experiences in there. I don't think that everybody, it's a little bit like VR. I don't think you could put that on everybody and they will be instantly impressed. I think there will be a subset of people that will be blown away by it, but I think there'll be an equal number of people that just won't get it or think, yeah, it's cool, but what does it mean? I think that it's good to try, but it's made it clearer than ever that I think we're further away to that AR future.
Interesting. Yeah. Chris, what about you? Any thoughts on AR real quick?
Yeah, I think, once kind of going back to pass through, once something like pass through is good enough that you can actually start to make good AR experiences and experiment with that medium and what it would look like. I think after we have that for a while, we'll end up finally getting glasses. But as it stands right now, there's not even any good software that I could run on a Quest 2, even though it looks like crap, but any like good AR experience that would actually work on that environment. So I hope Facebook's focus is getting Quest 2 Pro to be something somewhat of like an AR development kit platform that actually lets you do some cool stuff. Because I would definitely play a game where stuff's popping on my walls and all that in a Quest that had decent pass through. That's a good step because we're not going to get to the glasses like Gary said for like 10 years or more.
Yeah, pass through AR in VR is so underexplored, it seems, because you could have full FOV. So there goes the tiny little box that you're talking about, right? But we do need those pass-through cameras. And it's interesting that we have these rumors with the Quest Pro. So Steve, I want to talk to you really quick just about like Apple, because we haven't really touched Apple. Apple has purchased they've purchased companies that are VR and AR related. They've spent money. They're doing something. They have 10,000 engineers that they've been working on this AR thing. They've scrapped it, started over, done it again. there's something that Apple is working on, and it's probably going to see the light of day. And the rumors are that they're going to be starting in the second half of next year with a VR product, but that this VR product is almost going to be a Trojan horse just to get the AR pass-through stuff so that they can start building out that ecosystem. And so developers can start screwing around in a spatial way so that when their real AR product is ready, maybe 2026 or something, that foundation will be there. What thoughts do you have, Steve, in regards to pass through AR and VR and Apple and these sorts of things, and Quest Pro?
Okay, so AR, I really look forward to that 10 years or whatever. We shouldn't put timetables on it because, here we are 5 years after consumer VR. How wrong were we? But I look forward to that future, glasses. I wear glasses, right? I just give me a screen in there and let me get that utility. I was in New York City a couple weeks ago, took my son, just a quick trip, he and I. And as we were walking around, you lose GPS in all the skyscrapers, or your GPS is very reliable. And Google Maps will just let you take your phone and just like wave it back and forth, looking at the sort of the building structures, and it knows where you are based on seeing that. And just stuff like that. If it was just baked into my everyday glasses, that would be incredible. Like that's what I look forward to. Any sort of VR combo AR pass through thing that I'm gonna sit in this room. Okay, like maybe there will be some real useful utility, but I have a hard time visioning exactly what that is. A VR headset has its bulk, it has its weight, it has its optics. These are all things that are going to be a barrier to using it. So I don't know how meaningful that would be in my personal life. I do think Apple as a company, if they have something that it's baked well enough, it may not be that end game that we want to get to, but that it's probably baked well enough if they are going to release it. You talked about Facebook being the Mike Tyson. Well, in this case, Apple would be his Evander Holyfield. And I think them entering the market will be important. But I don't want to get my hopes up too much, because it could be minor. It could not, it doesn't necessarily have to be the iPhone or some kind of megaton juggernaut piece of componentry. So, yeah, I look forward to AR. Those are my comments. I look forward to AR, the more in-game, the stuff that Gary talks about in his book. He actually had a very good, and I know I've brought his book up a couple times, but I read it and enjoyed it. I have not been able to get into Ready Player 2 for some reason. So far, Gary, your book did better than Ernest Cline's sequel.
Thank you.
But in that book, and I'm not going to spoil anything because people need to go buy it and read it for themselves. But like, you had practical, real world like usages of VR and AR and how they could play together, and that is a future that I look forward to if I'm going to be alive. If it's not 40 years away, like yeah, I might be 80, but then am I going to give a shit? I don't know. So that's all I have to say.
All righty. Well, man, I'm not sure what we should get into now, or if we should just like go and get everybody's final thoughts, or what do you think?
Yeah, we can go through. It's up to you. I'm easy, to be honest. I've got no time limit, so we can go or we can wrap up. I'm easy.
Okay. Is there any like special topic that anybody was like, oh man, we didn't get to this, I wish we talked about this? Anything anybody can think of?
No, it doesn't sound like. Go on,
well,
Steve.
we have on just to kind of put it here, we had two kind of closing questions. I think was, what do we hope to see in the future for VR, both near term and long term, and maybe throughout the course of everything we've talked about, we've already answered it. So then the next question is, what do we think we will see in the future for VR, both near term and long term? So I don't know that we've addressed that one.
Why don't we just do this? Yeah. Well, how about this? Like,
okay,
is there something like, what are you excited for in this VR world? Like, is there something like, I just hope, I'm hoping for this. Like, is there anything you're hoping for in VR in the very near future? And go around the table.
I'll
Gary,
start. Like
okay, go
like
ahead.
for me, and I already touched it from a hope perspective, is that really PSVR 2 can answer this apparent software drought lull that's coming here after Lone Echo 2's out, and that we get something that's going to keep me, you know, tied to VR, because Elite Dangerous and Skyrim are only going to go so far for me, and eventually that will wane off. So that's really what I hope. Do I think PSVR 2 is going to do that? I don't know, but that's what's got me excited, is that this feeling that I've had in VR the last year or so will go away if Sony brings the heat.
All right, Gary, what about you? Something you're looking forward to?
It's a tough question, Anthony. Honestly, I think that somebody just put in chat. So DLG27 put AAA VR games, and I think that probably wraps up a lot of my thoughts on this. I don't know if we will get that.
Where are they coming from? That's
yeah,
the problem.
I think
other than Sony, like
Sony. Yeah, I mean that's really where it is, and maybe further investment from Facebook into the Quest. It's surprising. One of the things that is surprising to me is the amount of investment that they put into PCVR originally doesn't seem to be replicated on standalone as much, at least from what I've seen or what I understand to be. Like the finance that they put into PCVR. So we had big titles, and it was almost solely financed by Facebook. And now we've got this thing which is doing incredibly well, and maybe it's doing well enough that they feel they don't need to. But I just think that that's the next step that they should do. They should invest this kind of cash that they were investing into PCVR into software titles for the standalone market. So I guess that's what I hope. What I think. Well, I guess what I think is that they probably think they don't need to because it's doing well enough. Who knows? I can't get inside Mark Zuckerberg's head, and I don't want to, quite honestly.
Mark Zuckerberg is going to bite Tim Cook's ear off if the Evander Holyfield thing holds true. Chris, what about you? In terms of like, is there like, I know you don't play VR a lot. You're not paying attention to this stuff a lot, but is there something on the horizon that could just jazz you up and change it for you and make you super excited?
Yeah, it's kind of different than everyone else's answer, but I want somebody or some entity to release a metaverse of some kind that's actually compelling and something exciting and like a whole new, a whole new experience, and people really want to do it and they want to create stuff together in there. Like, hopefully Facebook will do something good, but Horizon was terrible. At least it seems terrible. Maybe they fix it up, but whoever that company is, or if it's like, Firefox making some web metaverse thing, we need a metaverse. And
Quick
that's
question,
what's
though.
holding VR back. Yeah.
Do you think that this metaverse that you're talking about, is it even possible right now, though? Like if somebody did the right thing, do you think it's possible to create what you're talking about right now, or maybe we need like 5 more years of technology to make that happen?
I think, hardware wise, we can do it. And, there's a bunch of servers and we have the internet. So surely it's possible. I think the biggest issues that remain are like, there's no consistent avatar system. Like it's kind of like HTML, like everyone agreed to use HTML and CSS to make websites. Like we need something like that for VR still. And I think we're starting to see some things happen in that space. There's like web VR that's kind of okay, but yeah, we need something big. And I think that's the big win. So I'm excited. Hopefully Facebook Connect is really good and they answer all my problems, but probably not.
Okay. Steve, what about you? Last hopes for, or did you already do this? Are you the first one that did it?
I think I did. Yep. My
The
hopes was in
PSV,
Sony. Sony, you're our Obi-Wan Sony. You're our only hope.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe. Wow. Okay, my last hopes. I mean, my hopes. I go back to the hardware thing, man, because I honestly like I would always ask this question when I would do an interview with a guest. I would talk about is the hardware at a baseline level? And I don't think it is. I don't think the hardware is at a baseline level. So I feel like we can't even judge VR. We can't even judge the success of VR because the hardware is not at that baseline level. Now this Quest Pro, with full color pass through, facial feature tracking, eye tracking, maybe that brings it to the baseline. I don't know, but I feel like I'm still excited for like some type of hardware type breakthrough, a bigger FOV. I don't know, something.
Here's where we can have an argument, because I'm guessing that Steve doesn't agree with that. That you've got two direct polar opposites here. So this is what we need. We need a good argument on the show.
The software, I get the software argument. Like you guys are saying, yeah, we need, but I don't know where it's coming from. So that's why I'm like, well, forget the software for now. Let's just make a better let's make a better hardware. And then hopefully hardware will get to it somehow. Or maybe if the hardware is so good, like it will demand the software come to it.
I'll go backwards and forwards on this sometimes, because when I was on your show, because I sort of agree with you, Anthony, we're not at the baseline level in some ways. I do think that occasionally, but then again, we need to, it's the chicken and egg situation. We need stuff to do, and this gradual progression, I guess, will just continue, and hopefully it will. But yeah, I do go back and forth on this. Sometimes I squarely agree with you, Anthony, but then other times I do think that if we just had more compelling, like Half-Life Alyx, if we had more of that, if we had
just one of those a month.
No, but yeah, exactly. If we had like 20 Half-Life Alyxes, would that get everybody into VR?
Probably, I think. If it was a lot of different genres and, hit everybody's like core need, yeah. All righty. Well, I think we covered a lot of things today, and we caught up with everybody, and we, it was great seeing everybody on today's show and having this reunion. So we're really excited to do that. So we will be back 1 year from today, ladies and gentlemen. We don't know what's going to happen, but we're looking forward, of course, to the Facebook Connect. It's going to be coming up later, I think in October, and hopefully some exciting new announcements. Quest Pro, maybe some big games, maybe Valve will have some games to talk about. So hopefully this VR thing, look, we all are still incredibly bullish for VR. We still believe this is going to be a breakaway technology that is going to change all of our lives. We believe that AR is going to be there as well, but a lot later. But it's exciting, so everything's good. We feel pretty good. We're in a slight little lull here, but it's nothing to worry about. VR is not going to die. We got plenty of future, and I think everything's wonderful. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today on this episode of VR Roundtable. This was episode 131 of the show, and hopefully we'll see you guys in the not too distant future. All right, everybody, have a good one.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.